What is up, everyone? Good evening. Today is Sunday, October 17th, and this is Raphael Garcia here for episode 100 of the Let's Talk Wrestling podcast. And I want to thank you, as always, for taking the time to listen to this show. As I'm pretty surprised I've made it to 100, to be honest with you. There's been plenty of times where I've wanted to stop recording just because I can be a little bit overworked from time to time, which usually happens very often. But I've kept it going, sometimes not as often or as frequent as I would like, but we're here for episode 100, chugging along and making progress along the way. I am looking forward to 2022 just because I have a lot of plans on how I want to kind of change around my podcasting work. So hopefully I have the opportunity. I'm going to be doing some planning for that over the next 2 months before the year ends and kind of get that stuff off the ground. But as always, thank you for taking the time to check us out because we have quite a bit to talk about tonight. It was a very busy weekend for professional wrestling, and I'll be talking about a lot of different stuff from over the week, specifically the Friday Night Wars, quote unquote, from Friday with AEW and WWE. I'm going to talk a little bit about the AEW eliminator tournament, which I think I may have some controversial thoughts about that. I might, because it seems like more people are thinking about it the same way that I am, that I thought would be the case. But I'll be talking about that. And I'm also going to talk about WoW continuing to mess stuff up as they've been doing these last few weeks. So before I do that, as always, I want to thank you for taking the time to listen to this show. You can always find us across multiple channels, including MMAratings.net and .com, where our podcast can be found along with a lot of written content right now. Schwan Humes is the main writer for that site. You can also find Schwan on the MMA Ratings podcast, which we are, I think, nearing episode 250. That is earlier in the week, and we'll be back this week. We were not here last week because of course, myself. But you can find us at both of those spots. Check us out on Instagram and Twitter at MMA Ratingsnet in both spaces. You can hit us up across all the podcast platforms: Anchor, Breaker, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Overcast, and Spotify. Check us out in those spots as well too. So I'm going to go ahead and jump right into it and talk about the Friday Night Wars from this past week. And I have to admit, it was a little fun. It was a little fun to see the two shows trying to one-up each other and putting on better content. I'm not going to necessarily say better content because WWE always fails in that space. But putting on their content and trying to draw in the viewers' eyes. I thought it was an enjoyable moment for everyone involved, including like the wrestling fans who were watching at home. It was interesting. The lead up into it was also fun. However, if pro wrestlers want to take shots at each other, they can do that all day. And I often feel like more often than not, they are doing so in a joking fashion, and they're well aware that they are joking. They're friends for the most part. It seems like they have a brotherhood and sisterhood amongst each other more often than not, and that we as fans should respect that when Tony is taking shots at Vince and WWE. I don't think we should take it as seriously as some people do. Some people get insanely in their feelings about this stuff, and it's uncomfortable to watch the way people argue online over professional wrestling. It's just weird. It's very weird. Like this week we saw Top Dollar make a joke about sneakers, fake sneakers, and obviously the Young Bucks have been wearing fake sneakers on AEW as part of part of their gimmick, part of their shtick of who they are as those comedic heels. And it was just a shot from Hit Row to the Young Bucks, and it just went left. It went left, and the reason probably why it went so left is because of Voices of Wrestling and their tweet where they got really upset about it, basically saying that Top Dollar hasn't done anything with his career compared to the Young Bucks, and that he shouldn't be talking about them in any way, shape, or form. And it's like, okay, they've been wrestling for how many years now? And I think he's only been in the industry for like 2. So, of course, he hasn't done nearly as much as they have. Like, that's not his space. But to see them them being voices of wrestling and a lot of people that fall into that space, to see them get so upset over it was a little bit, eyebrow raising to me, because people have been really upset at the idea of Hit Row being a mainstay on the main roster. And I think that it does a lot more than with them being heels. Obviously, people don't want to... Wrestling isn't as inclusive as everyone likes to make it out to be, and this could potentially be another example of how that sits out. I mean, Voices of Wrestling have been blocking people left and right because of they're bringing up old tweets from the people who run the site. And I've even talked about some stuff that they've said on their podcast, specifically when they made it a point to, I think it was Rich, I can't remember which one, made it a point to, he was very clear at pointing out Kofi Kingston as the issue with when he was a champion, with the way ratings were falling in WWE. But it was long, the issue with Kofi's run didn't impact WWE. WWE impacted Kofi's run because they're shit booking. But see how adamant he was in talking bad about Kofi's run. But then when it came to Drew, who defended the title against nearly the same people in this almost the same order as Kofi didn't really have too much to say there. So it's seeing things like that, or hearing things like that, I must say, you have to wonder sometimes where some of the animosity is coming from. And that's something that we continue to see with WWE and AEW. And a lot of it isn't genuine conversations, unfortunately. But still, that's a whole different conversation. But the Rampage versus SmackDown showcase this weekend was very fun. SmackDown went from 8 to 10:30. That last half hour was commercial free. Most of it was split pretty evenly between the match between Sasha Banks and Becky Lynch and then also the contract signing segment with Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar. I thought that was a little stupid that the contract signing was the main event, but that is the central story, and that's the type of stuff WWE does. Rampage went from 9 to 11. They're usually 10 to 11 on Fridays, but they bumped it up an hour with the buy-in that featured some very good wrestling. It featured Santana Garrett and Tay Conti. What was that? It featured I think it may have been a Bunny and Tay Conti, one of the two. I know she's had a couple of matches within, but whatever. Tay Conti was on the card. Lee Moriarty and Bobby Fish, they had a really good match where Bobby Fish went over, obviously, to set him up for his match with Bryan Danielson the next night. And then we also had Bryan Danielson and Minoru Suzuki, which was an excellent contest. I have not taken the thought of which was better, Omega versus Bryan or Suzuki versus Bryan. But this is fantastic wrestling. To be honest with you, we shouldn't even be having, I don't want to necessarily say we shouldn't have those conversations, but they're pointless right now. Just enjoy some fantastic wrestling, and that's exactly what that match was. I enjoyed it from start to finish, and it was a lot of fun. I'm mildly familiar with Minoru. I mean, I know him from MMA. I don't follow New Japan as strongly as possible, except for around Wrestle Kingdom and the G1 time. But I know who he is, and he and Danielson put on a hell of a show. And Danielson's on a tear. And the thing is, he's on this tear of pro wrestling, but you can tell that he's having fun with it along the way. And I think that that's really the biggest part there. I really feel like when you're in these entertainment type of jobs, like professional wrestlers or actors or musicians or whatever that may be, if you're having a good time while doing it, you're probably doing some of your best work. And Bryan Danielson has always done exceptional work, great work as a pro wrestler, as an entertainer in that space. But what he's doing right now with AEW, when he left WWE, I wrote a piece about whether or not he can have a run that was kind of like what Chris Jericho did a few years back, where he was on WWE in New Japan back and forth and going to other shows in AEW and all this other stuff within the same year. Daniel Bryan has already outpaced that. The match with Omega alone outpaced all of what Jericho did. Now he has Minoru. Now he had that great match with Bobby Fish. He had a great match with Nick Jackson as well. So these guys are tearing it up. And now he's in the AEW title eliminator tournament. And I'm going to be talking about that as well too. But this guy's been on a run. And Suzuki, he's super over. He doesn't need to win. I don't think he's won yet in AEW. He doesn't need to win. He just needs to show up and let the fans cheer him and sing Kazuni Nare and have fun. Like, that's really all he needs to do, and that's what he's doing. Again, he looks like he's having fun in there every step of the way too. So that's something that I always look to, and you can definitely tell these individuals are having a great time working together. And Bryan Danielson is on a hell of a run. CM Punk and Matt Sydal, they had a good match as well too. And for me, this was something I wanted to see from Sydal because it was like it was a match where he could prove that he can still hang with the best of the best. I think Sydal's a great wrestler. People forget how good he is and how good he was. And yeah, he's kind of falling on the back burner. And even within AEW, he hasn't necessarily gone on too much of a run per se. He's doing a lot of work over there on Dark Elevation. But the dude is good. And him and Punk had a very good match to open up Rampage. It was good to see Sydal get a lot of his stuff in. Punk obviously won. And I know I'm not the only one who's feeling this way because I've seen someone else talk about it as well too. But I'm starting to begin to want a little more out of Punk. I need something from him story-wise. The CM Punk pop is always going to be there. People are always going to cheer him the way they do. They're always going to chant CM Punk the way that they do. But I would like to see a little bit more from him. Like, let's see. Hopefully we can get this story with him and Ricky Starks rolling now that Ricky Starks has beaten Brian Cage again. Hopefully we can get that story rolling and it can lead to something there, because that is what a whole lot of people were talking about once news broke that CM Punk was being signed. Him and Ricky Starks in the ring, on the microphone, in each other's faces, that has money written all over it. And I want to see how they can do that. Obviously, they can book it around the FTW title. They can book it around Taz being mad at CM Punk for the shot at him being ECW champion. Just so much other stuff that they can do from a storyline standpoint to make this work. But I need something more from CM Punk. And it's not that it's getting old. It's not that his show up, get the loud pop, talk about being back, this is never going to get old type of thing isn't working, but it's growing a little bit still for me. That's just me talking. Well, it's just me, but I know I'm not the only one that feels that way, because I saw someone else tweet out the same thing as well today. So it's not just me. I know that for a fact. But like I said, it was a great match between the two, and Punk got the win. Then over on, almost said Raw, over on SmackDown, the only thing of value, they had a couple of different things of value. I think that's a lie. And I'm going to be hopping back and forth between the two shows, talking about what kind of stood out to me. But they had Sami Zayn versus Finn Balor for the King of the Ring tournament. Obviously as hell, Finn Balor was going to win this because Sami Zayn cannot go to Saudi Arabia. That's where the finals are going to be. It's dumb. It was dumb to book him in a tournament because you knew he wasn't going to win, no matter how far he got. But here we are. Finn Balor picked up the victory here. And that's why I'm looking at this like they're going to do Finn Balor versus Jinder Mahal at Saudi Arabia. And I think Finn's going to win it. But again, why? It's not necessarily about giving fans what they want all the time, because we see the value in that in AEW. They give fans what they want. They may stretch it out like they're doing with the Adam Page story, but that's still, that was stretched out for both reasons they could control and reasons they couldn't. But there's value in giving fans what they want in the moments that they want. People want to see Xavier Woods elevated in a singles fashion, and the King of the Ring was a perfect opportunity to elevate him there. They had an opportunity to do a fantastic match with a lot of background between Kofi Kingston and Xavier Woods, but they just pissed this shit away for no reason. And it's almost they do it in spite of the fans. And that's been the issue for so many years with WWE, especially with them not having any competition, because they can do stuff like that and they're like, well, people don't have anything else to watch, so we can do stuff like that and people are going to come back. It's not so much the case anymore. People have turned it off. People aren't coming back, and people turned on AEW and they're not coming back. So that's another, again, just like earlier, that's another conversation for another day. But Sami Zayn and Finn Balor, they had a great match, in my opinion. Sami Zayn is so good at professional wrestling. He's just so good in the space. And I can't even, from his character work to his ring work to his ability on the mic, Sami Zayn is a golden goose when it comes to professional wrestling. And when you have him there with Kevin Owens, it's even better. But the dude can work, and I don't think there's anything he can't do when it comes to pro wrestling. It's kind of unfortunate that he hasn't been utilized in the way that everyone wants to see, but that's a running story with WWE. Him and Finn Balor did some work on Friday as well, though. So if you want to go back and you want to catch a match one of the better two matches on WWE this week, be sure to go back and catch the Sami Zayn versus Finn Balor match. So the Inner Circle, and as I said, we're going to be hopping back and forth. The Inner Circle, who was it? It was Sammy, Jericho, and Hager had a match against Ethan Page, Scorpio Sky, and Junior Dos Santos. I'm 110% over the Inner Circle. I've said this on this show before. I said it on other shows. I've tweeted it. I'm 110% over those guys. And the main reason why I'm so over them is because of Chris Jericho. If we lived in a world where we had a AEW version of LAX, I would be here for that. Imagine an AEW version of LAX. Tito, you have Santana, you would have Ortiz pairing with Thunder Rosa, Eddie Kingston, Diamante, or even Sammy. Like, that would be a amazing group. But instead, they're stuck here with Jericho and Hager. And every time I see them on TV, I have to tweet out free LAX. And now it's free LAX and free Sammy. But they had a match against another group that needs some type of freedom in Ethan Page and Scorpio Sky. Now, imagine, like, they should be feuding with each other. That's where I could see that should be going. And we know it's going to get there at some point. But why? Like, this whole Dan Lambert stuff just does not work for me. I wrote about it. Again, I talked about it on this show. It's pulled right out of the 90s era, or right out of the Attitude Era, in my opinion. And it just doesn't work for me. I don't want to see or hear Jericho have a whole monologue on, like he did on Saturday, using the same jokes against Paige Van Zandt that he was using against Stephanie McMahon. I don't even think Paige was alive when he was making those jokes against Stephanie McMahon. Like, that's how outdated that shit is. And it just doesn't have a place in professional wrestling anymore. And I don't know what they're going to do. Like, I feel like they're doubling down on this stuff, and it's going to turn some people off. Not a whole lot, but that is definitely the point where I turn or I get up and walk away from my TV or computer or where I maybe ever be watching. It's the same thing with Joe Gacy over there in NXT. When he comes on TV, I'm doing something else, walking away, looking at something else, turning the channel, whatever it may be. This gimmick has run its course, and the Inner Circle as an entire unit needs to go somewhere. They can bring them back together when need be, sure. But having them out here as in these types of matches, I don't need it. I definitely don't need Jake Hager on my television ever again. Paige and Scorpio Sky, man. I feel like Paige is going to get his run as a main event heel. We may be like 2 years away from that, but I don't know if Scorpio is ever going to get his shot that we thought he was going to get. We really kind of had him tabbed as the individual that would make a true run as the first black, like, top talent in AEW, and that's just been ground to a halt. So I don't know if we're going to look forward 2 years in advance, or 2 years in the future, 3 years in the future, and look at this moment as somewhere that he turned around from, or if this is his moment where he just kind of runs into obscurity at AEW. I know that he just signed a 5-year deal, I believe it was, contract extension. I know he did sign one. I remember seeing some of those headlines. But some positives out of this match is JDS, he looked a lot better than I thought. My expectations were the lowest of the low when it came to seeing him in the ring, but he looked fine. He is going to have to work on his selling and stuff like that if he wants to. This is something that he wants to continue doing and does again in the future. But he did not look anywhere as near as bad as I expected him to, or anyone else expected him to. And I think that that's a good thing. We should always kind of tip our hand to see that, because it's hard for him. I know it had to be interesting and hard for him as an athlete who threw real punches and kicks for, 20 years or so, the majority of his life, and now being told to throw fake punches and kicks. That takes some getting used to, especially when you're out there, you have all the adrenaline running and stuff like that. So I think he did a very good job, and he looked much better than my expectations for him, which were basically in the basement. Paige Van Zandt, though, I think she's going to end up being the star of this, like the star outcome of this. And I know she doesn't, not necessarily saying, okay, let me back up. Hey, she doesn't need pro wrestling. The woman could live off of her endorsement deals alone, period. She was making more from her endorsement deals in a year than she was making through her total UFC run. She's done 2 BKFC fights, lost both of those. She still has her OnlyFans platform. She has her endorsements going. She does not need to become a pro wrestler to make ends meet. Her husband still fights as well too, and he's a decent competitor over in Bellator. I'm not sure if he's ranked or not, how their rankings are going, but I know he's definitely in title contention. So they don't need the pro wrestling circuit type of money. However, if AEW was to find a way to talk her into maybe having 1 or 2 matches, I'm down for it. Rake that money in and rake that payday in. I would love to see her have like a match with a Thunder Rosa, or a match with like a Layla Hirsch. Let's go ahead and do that. Or even a match with like a Tay Conti, because Tay Conti has a judo and jiu-jitsu background as well too, so they can make that work and kind of play that up off of each other. But there's opportunity there, and I'm sure that Tony sees it, and he's probably talked to her about it. I mean, she's been around all the time for this angle. So let's see what happens, and let's see kind of how that plays out, because I think that there's opportunity there for them to really kind of make some headlines, and for her to make some money as always. And as you guys know, I'm always about people making their money. But if we live in a world where we get Thunder Rosa versus Paige Van Zandt, you can sign me up for all of that twice. And then my favorite match, I'm not going to say my favorite match of the Friday Night Wars, but definitely one that I can't say it overachieved because of who was in it, but I wasn't expecting them to tear it up like they did. Becky Lynch and Sasha Banks tore it up on Friday, and I know people are a little bit miffed at the finish where Banks pinned Lynch with Alpha the Backstabber when Bianca Belair got a little involved. I get that, but everything else before that was some amazing professional wrestling. I'm not sure how long. I want to look and see how long the match was. Let me pull that up, because they should have it up on Cage Match. They're usually quick about this. Nope, they don't have it up yet. But she and Becky Lynch put on a show. Actually, no, I'm wrong. They went for 17 minutes. 17 minutes, which was almost 18, which is fantastic. They're getting a lot more. They're getting more time in this match than the entire Queen's Crown tournament, but that's another conversation for another day because just, WWE booking is what it is. But these two women tore it up, and I wrote a piece about Sasha Banks calling her the closer, where she gets out there and she gets into these big match moments and she consistently excels. Sasha Banks versus Bayley at NXT TakeOver. Sasha Banks versus Charlotte Flair at Monday Night Raw, where she won her first title. The tag team match in Hell in a Cell, where they won those titles. Her match against Charlotte Flair that was in the Elimination Chamber. Her match against Charlotte Flair in Hell in a Cell, where Flair won that title. Her match against Ronda Rousey at Royal Rumble a couple years ago. Her match against Bianca Belair at WrestleMania. There are a list of big matches that the WWE has tapped Sasha Banks to have, and she goes out there and she puts on a show. And even beyond that, I wrote about this as well too, is that her presence on NXT along with Bayley helped NXT beat the AEW Dynamite show for 2 weeks in a row. In fact, it's because of them that everybody starts talking about the demo so much, because Chris Jericho started calling himself the demo god because he couldn't beat Sasha and Bayley together on NXT. So the reason why so many people are talking about demos is because of Sasha Banks and Bayley, and she's really like the closer. She's like a Steph Curry with 5 seconds left taking a big shot, a Dame Lillard with 5 seconds left taking a big shot, Tom Brady driving down for one final drive to win a game, Mariano Rivera walking out for the Yankees to enter Sandman to close out a game. There's so many different other examples of athletes who in their spaces were big moment shutout type of players, and Sasha Banks is one of them in professional wrestling, because she gets into these moments and she excels and she continues to do it. I get why her fan base loves her so much. They're definitely toxic as fuck, but I get why her fan base loves her so much, because she gets out there and she does stuff like this, and no one can touch her. I mean, you can't touch a performer who gets out there like she does and does it all the time. So hats off to her, because she's definitely the closer, and her and Becky Lynch tore it up on Friday. I wanted to take a few moments to talk about the AEW eliminator bracket, because this came out on Saturday during the special edition of Dynamite, which was on Saturday, and I am underwhelmed. I'm totally underwhelmed with this. The left side of the bracket includes the Dark Order's 10, Jon Moxley, Orange Cassidy, and Powerhouse Hobbs. Then the right side includes Dustin Rhodes, Bryan Danielson, Lance Archer, and Eddie Kingston. Now, here's my thing. I think all these matches are going to be fine, but we could have done much better. We could have gotten much better. And I'm a little interested in what they're going to do with Moxley and Cassidy. If you didn't watch Dynamite, Moxley beat the brakes off of Yuta Wheeler, and as he walks out, Cassidy kind of looks at him in a way that is like, yo, I don't appreciate you beating on my dude like this. So there's going to be something there between those two, and that means that Cassidy has to beat Hobbs, which, okay, I get it. Cassidy is, a bigger name in AEW, so, I'm fine with it. Why is Dustin Rhodes in this? Like, help me understand. Help me understand. I get why Lance Archer's in it. I get why I think Kingston's ranked as well, too. I get it. But what the hell is Dustin Rhodes doing in this? And, okay, like, Lance Archer and Eddie Kingston, we know they aren't going to win. In fact, we know no one else other than Moxley and Danielson are getting to the finals. The finals of this is at AEW Full Gear in November on the 13th. But why couldn't we get Bryan Danielson versus Pac? Danielson versus Andrade? Why couldn't we get some matches like that in the first round? Where's, like I said, where's Andrade? Where's Pac? Where's someone like a You could even throw like a Malachi Black in there or something like that, and not necessarily say that he has to lose in some form or fashion. But there's other ways you can maybe book around that. Maybe not so much Malachi Black, but you could have thrown a Miro in here because he's struggling with his loss of the TNT title, and you can use that to kind of maybe him getting bumped out of the tournament is like what makes him go through like another breaking point. He's so-called quote unquote feuding with God, so there's opportunities there. But this bracket doesn't make me want to stop and watch. And that's just me. It just doesn't do it for me. So where's Wardlow too? You could have had him in here. But again, like I said, it is what it is, and this is just not what I want to see out of a tournament. I was really excited when they announced this coming back, but this group doesn't really work for me. But that's just my opinion. You can have your own opinions about it because that's the good thing about everyone having one. You can have your own. You can leave it at that. But what we won't have an opinion about is the way that WoW continues to fuck up their return. Now, we talked about it last week. She was our main image, the header image, and we talked about WoW bringing Tessa Blanchard back, but they went a bit further. Fightful Select reported on Thursday, I believe, that Tessa went as far as WoW went as far as an attempt to bring La Rosa Negra into WoW and get her and Tessa into some type of angle together. According to the report, they wanted the two women to have a sit down and talk, on their own, the squash things, and then to do something on TV together. What the fuck? And as I sit here and think about it, I would not be surprised if the angle they would have ran is Tessa saving La Rosa from getting beat down or something like that. I would not be surprised. That's some type of redemption angle for her as a babyface. Not one bit. Thankfully, that did not happen. She declined, and that will not be occurring. But there is no accountability for whiteness in professional wrestling. None. They get out, some of these athletes and some of these performers get out here and say wild stuff. They do wild stuff, and they behave in a way where it's just like, this is stupid. But because it's pro wrestling where they are the majority, and in most spaces, it just goes without an eye turned towards it. You have behaviors that are just ridiculous, and it's like, well, boys will be boys, or this is just the way it is. Don't sell it, as Terry Ronald said on Dark Side of the Ring. And it's just unfortunate because there's no accountability across the board, and it's sad because it also trickles down to white women as well, as we see with Tessa getting yet another opportunity. It's a smaller branch at WoW, but if she does things that gets people to watch and gets people to tune in, don't be surprised if she shows up somewhere else in the future. And at some point, this is the conversation that I don't think we're ready to have yet. At some point, we need to have a conversation about AJ Mendez and why she's so involved and why she's in all these pictures with Tessa hugged up with her, because she has fans that are looking at her like, yo, what are you doing? Why are you all up in this mix with her in such a fashion? But at some point in time, we're going to have to talk about that. It won't be tonight, though, because we're closing out this episode 100 of the Let's Talk Wrestling podcast. And again, I just want to thank everyone for listening to the show, everyone who's taken the time to like, share, and subscribe to our platform. Check out a video, hit subscribe, hit like, share it, all that stuff. I really appreciate all the support that I've received over the past couple of years of doing this show and also doing MMA Ratings podcast. And you can catch us there this week as well, too. But as always, thank you again for taking the time to do so. You can find me at rgarcia_sports, and we'll be back again this week. So everyone stay safe and have a great week.